What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Sailor Turn Gamer, and we are back in the building coming at you with another Dauntless video. Today I wanted to start a conversation about something that I was reading on Reddit. So before we even get into it, I'm gonna leave in the description below a link to the actual Reddit conversation that we're going to be talking about, and I must say all praises goes to AccelGT or AccelGT, probably short for acceleration or something like that. I don't know, but I wanted to give praise to my guy because this was the guy who came up with these thoughts and impressions. I am just the guy that I read him. I kind of agree with some of the things that he's talking about, and I wanted to kind of just put this information out to you guys and let you guys know what's going on, those of you that aren't active on Reddit, and maybe you guys have any thoughts and suggestions about what we're going to talk about. Well, if you guys clicked on the video, then you know that we're talking about some suggested changes to wound, enrage, and defensive cells, and maybe a few others here and there as well. So let's just kick this thing right off at the beginning, right? He talked about mechanics. He talked about wound status, some wound damage changes, and just overall changes to wound. His opinions: wound damage is just not in a good place right now. As you can see, it just when you're playing by yourself or when you're playing with Warpike, even if you think about it, it's kind of illogical. How can you break apart without wounding it? What do you guys think about that? But as far as the wound changes, every part from Behemoth at 30% health is like an example value. But every part from the Behemoth at 30% health is wounded. Wound damage will make this percentage grow. So someone with wound damage could make that part wound at 60% HP. This will make all related wound cells and Warpikes more viable when playing with a group. More specifically, the way I interpreted this to means that they should make changes to wound damage and the way this works. How can you wound a part and not break that actual part? So every part should have at least 30% wound damage that is actually applied. And let's say you have a wound-based build. Well, the more cells that you kind of put into your build to create a wound-based damage, then you are going to be doing more wound damage on your part hits. That's kind of like something that he was suggesting. Now, he also spoke on Enrage and then Special Enrage as well. As far as the Enrage, the Behemoth Rage is weak where nothing is to fear. It feels more like a normal phase than an enraged beast fighting for its life. There's no need to delete or change it, but he thinks that it would be cool if you create a special dangerous rage that happens only once per hunt, something like a Special Enrage. So, every Slayer that will be hit by the Rage Aura, the Behemoth will stream, getting new skills or modifiers and increase a lot of its movement patterns, attack speed, and damage receiving, and making the percentage danger increase to 100% during the Special Enrage time. Since this will make the Behemoth a lot harder to defeat, the conditions to Special Enrage could happen a little differently. After the Behemoth's health reaches 50%, 40%, 30%, 20%, 10%, about 5 times the game, we'll check based on the damage percentage if the Behemoth must Special Enrage. The higher the DPS dealt to the Behemoth and the lower the Behemoth's health will increase the chances every check. The duration of Special Enrage will be based on the triggered HP percentages. Basically, the more HP percentage you have is the longer the duration. This will make Special Enrage hard to happen if you are getting a painful time with the Behemoth. If the Special Enrage happens, it will be on lower life. You could kill it fast or wait and play it safe since the duration is lower. There's nothing more dangerous than a corner beast. Basically, he would like to see a change to the way the Enrage status works. Hopefully you guys understood that when reading it on the screen or listening to myself. And the way I took that is to mean, well, he thinks that maybe in the higher tier, that's my opinion, they should have a Special Enraged moment that would happen with the Behemoth. And the way that moment should happen should be based off of a threshold. Once the behemoth gets to 50%, there should be a check going all the way from 50, 40, 30, 20, 10. And that's when the system should check the behemoth and decide when it rages, it hits that special enrage on one of those thresholds. Now, if it's 10%, it doesn't last that long. If it's 50%, maybe it lasts a little bit longer. But one of those raised checks on that percentage health drop, the system should check and say, we won't do it at 50, but maybe this time randomly we're going to do it at 30%. And then it's going to hit that special enraged moment. Once it hits that special enraged moment, that's when it gets those increases as to how many, attacks, how many enemies that it hits on that bump. And that's when it gets that movement speed increase, that attack variation, that attack speed. And that's when, the damage that it's going to receive is going to, be a lot more damage related, which could be pretty awesome. I think that could be a nice way to kind of change up some of those hunts, maybe even make them a little bit more challenging. So I want to know what you guys think about that. I know it's a mouthful, but I think it's an interesting concept. Now, let's move on to defensive cells. So he did have some thoughts on defensive cells, and again, I want to know what you guys think about that. He believes that there needs to be more love because no one's really using them, or at least in his opinion. Some of the defensive cells could be improved. They are a little weak. The damage could be better, and so some of the thoughts on that is as follows. For the fortress cell, after not taking damage for 5 seconds, gain a 5, 10, 20, 30, 40, or 50 health, a cumulative shield that stacks up to 6 times. So after 30 seconds, you'll end up with a 300 shield for a +6 fortress. I think that would be pretty cool. Definitely will be better than what already exists. As far as sturdy is concerned, having sturdy will prevent you from being staggered on a 120, 180, 60, 40, 15 second count cooldown. You guys kind of get the gist of that. Prevented hits deal 20% less damage, and you become immune for 1 to 5 seconds after preventing from being staggered. I think that will be pretty interesting as well. Let's move on to toughness. Of course, with each tier, you're going to get that increase in max health. And also, some of the proposals was a 10, 15, 20, 25% of damage that was received is healed over 10 seconds. If you had not received any healing recently, 3-second regeneration of 1% of your extra max HP for second. And having a tough +6 HP will give you about 48 HP after 10 seconds. So pretty much some of these changes to some of the defensive cells that he had in mind could really put players in a position to maybe want to play a little bit more of a defensive style. Maybe use even more of those defensive cells. Me personally, I think some of the defensive cells in the game can leave you a little to desire. So again, I want to know what you guys think about that. He had a couple of thoughts on 9 lives as well. Is again something else that could be changed. His thoughts was that you could have an 80% chance to resist to be knocked out with a 1 HP and cleanse any damage element. This could happen up to 9 times. That would be pretty cool. It's called 9 lives, so why not play a little bit more on that 9 number a little bit more. So every time you resist to be knocked out, the chance to resist are lower, anywhere by 60 to 50 to 40 to 30 to 20 to 15%, as you guys can see. After 10 seconds without being knocked out or resisted, you gain 1% chance to resist to be knocked out. So he did leave a special note: when you resist to be knocked out, the animation for being hit should be played, so making you immune for a short time, so you can't get killed for a second after an instant hit. This would just create a system to where you are constantly having these procs to happen to where you can be immune. And throughout the course of a fight, if this could happen anywhere up to 9 times, I think it would be pretty cool. It would be a very kind of cool cat-like way to be like, hey, I got an extra life. I think that's a very unique and cool change. Let me know what you guys think about that as well. Some other changes that I want to quickly cover are Predator cells. Predator cells, the bonus damage should be progressive, so after not taking damage every 2 seconds, you're going to gain X amount of damage until you get a max bonus, instead of waiting for 15 seconds. I think that would be interesting as well. Stun and Vigor, life gained after every time you're staggered. It's not really worth it. It should be something that will give you an X amount of damage dealt to stagger Behemoth as a permanent shield. That would be pretty cool. The Vampire Cell, which in my opinion is one of the worst cells, I just think it sucks. I'm not a big fan of it. But same as Stunning Vigor, it's not really worth it. It should be something like X amount of damage percentage dealt to a wound part should gain you life. I think that would be cool instead of what it actually is right now. As far as Shroud weapons, he actually has some thoughts on that too, and that's passive. It's just too bad 20% of health is really low, and there's not even a way to start with low life like Discipline Cells. There's two ways to kind of change it that he thought, and you can either make it progressive, so that way you increase 1% of damage for every 2% of health lost, or something as far as like reducing damage and increasing the threshold to 50%. Those would be some interesting changes. I'm kind of a big fan of some of the ones that he proposed, but again guys, let me know what you guys think. Lastly, I would like to say that someone that is a part of the community mod, Ket, actually has some thoughts on that as well. The stagger damage thing that was mentioned is actually part of the game, so that was kind of new. But whenever a Behemoth gets staggered or enraged, it gains a larger stagger shield than the last for 30 seconds. You can break it faster with damage, but you need a lot of it for later Behemoths as the shield scales much more with the threat level than the normal threshold. In trials, chain staggering usually happens because you swap between interrupts, regular stagger, and part breaks. As far as the other things, Cat didn't really comment on them. So I would like to know what you guys think about that, because this was particularly interesting in my opinion, and I believe if you guys get an opportunity to check out that link, be sure to go to it. Give it a thumbs up if you enjoy it, because I think it's something that they should definitely think about making some of the changes. Not all of them, maybe, but I think some of these, there were some interesting things in there. So that's pretty much it for today's video. I really wanted to cover this because I thought it was extremely interesting. Let me know what you guys think about that in the comment section below again. And if you found my channel for the very first time, be sure to give the video a like and a share, and join the fleet by hitting that sub button. Until then, I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.